That was a big wake-up call to me, how much impact are expats actually having on their local community. That's going to rebound and basically end up in your face.
Meet Jason, an Australian lawyer who has called Cuenca his home for 6 years. In this video, we explore his background.
I'm a lawyer by trade, so I get it. I thought it would be really tough to convince my fiancée to move here.
How he chose Ecuador.
I did zero research before I set foot in Ecuador.
The challenges he's faced.
A lot of it is cultural, a lot of it is expectation gaps.
Life as an expat.
I started to really feel like the people here were really...
Real estate tips, and his advice for anyone thinking about making the move.
The first tip I have is always try and have...
I have a super cool guest that we're going to be meeting today, and we're going to find out about his story and how he ended up here where we are currently now. So let's go ahead, let's get to know him. So what is your name, my friend?
Awesome. I'm Jason.
Jason.
Great to meet you, Eric.
Thank you for coming here to be able to tell your story. I'm really excited to have you. Where are you from, Jason?
I'm from Australia, but I've been living in Cuenca for around 6 years now.
So where we are currently is one of the biggest expat hubs of almost all of Latin America. Wouldn't you agree?
I would agree, and I've been to some of the other ones too, like Medellin, but definitely different crowds.
Yeah.
So like obviously Medellin has the younger crowds. Here it's kind of more focused, I guess, on the retiree crowd.
Right.
Not exclusively. So we do work in real estate, and I do see a lot of younger families that are starting to come here now as well. So that's very exciting that some of these digital nomad types are starting to see Cuenca as a destination.
You definitely enjoy living here, right?
It's my home. I've been here for 6 years or so, and we're definitely not leaving. We have a family here. We love it. It still works really well for us. There's a lot of additional considerations that you do need to look after if you come to somewhere like Cuenca. But for me, the good certainly outweighs the negative.
Let's specifically jump into your personal story, because I want to know, how would an Australian make it to Ecuador? People wouldn't think, oh yeah, Australian, they're probably going to try and leave, because a lot of people think of Australia as this best quality of life type of location on the planet, really, and it has some of the highest job paying opportunities, blah, 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 blah. So what caused you to come here, and how did you end up staying?
I came to Ecuador to go kite surfing in Santa Marinita on the coast. I did zero research before I set foot in Ecuador. I was living in Medellin at the time, but basically I was this digital nomad type that lived in Thailand, Vietnam, other parts of Asia, Dubai, but all those countries never really worked for me because I was too scared that if I make a commitment to the country, let's say I learn the language, which it's a huge commitment. That's like a 2-3 year thing, studying full time. If I didn't like that country anymore, then those learnings are effectively lost. I can't take them with me. South America was the opposite of that. I could effectively, learn some Spanish and take that with me everywhere. And so that's why I shifted from Asia to South America. But I had residency in Paraguay first. That was my first attempt. It was just a very good country to get residency from, at least an easy country to get residence if you earn some income from outside of the country and you don't necessarily want that taxed. But there's a whole variety of reasons why I didn't like Paraguay. It's not really for me. For me, Cuenca is much more eclectic. There's just a lot more things going on. I thought I would maybe end up in Medellin, Colombia, or maybe Brazil, maybe Argentina. But no, I came here to go kite surfing. My kite surfing gear was sent over from my parents in Australia. It's never arrived. And so I had, instead of this 2-week kite surfing trip, turned into like this 3 or 4 month ordeal of trying to get my gear. But throughout that time, I met my partner in Quito. She's now my fiancée. We have kids and family and all that. And so that was the main reason that I stayed, is I started to really feel like the people here were really genuine people, honest people. And I could actually see myself having a real life here in Ecuador and Cuenca in particular for me.
I've met expats, explored prices, walked the streets, and looked into safety. If you're serious about Ecuador, check out my full playlist for real boots on the ground info. How did you end up in Cuenca?
Yeah, so I came here for a 2-week trip. That was it. But I came here from Medellin, and I wasn't sure where I was going. I was probably going to go to Peru or Chile afterwards, but I never got there. So I spent the first 2 weeks trying to really work out where the hell is my kite surfing gear and just travel arrangements and all that sort of stuff. But over time, as I started to learn Quito, I started to really have a pretty serious relationship at the time with my partner, who is from Quito. She does speak really good English. She's a former tour guide. She still works in tourism. So the language side of things was great. It was always there. And we lived in Quito for about a year before. And during that year, we did basically like a lot of expats. We came to Cuenca on this exploratory trip just to check it out. I'd heard good things. I'd passed through here briefly on a trip to Peru to go do some surfing in Mancora. And so I liked it, but I thought it would be really tough to convince my fiancée to move here because all of her family's in Quito. And that was tough. And that is, like families in Latino culture, that they're very tight. So that was a big deal. But honestly, she hasn't looked back. She really loves it. And pretty much, I don't feel like we're missing anything. The only things that I feel like Cuenca itself is missing is, and this is a double-edged sword, and I don't actually know if it's missing, but the connections. So a lot of expats will complain, and a lot of tourists in particular will complain about the air connections in Cuenca. They don't hook up that well to flights from the US. Maybe you have to spend a night in Quito, and getting to the Galapagos, which is a huge thing for tourism. It's just to come into Cuenca, it adds like another 3 or 4 days onto any itinerary, which is normally pretty tight as it is. So it really struggles. But in saying that, it kind of it almost stops some of the change from happening. You know, you walk in El Centro here, and you do kind of feel like you're walking down, I don't know, 16th, 17th century Spain, and I think that lack of access plays a big part in that preservation. And so I would hate to see that go as well.
When you moved and you decided to live in Ecuador, what was one of the major struggles or most difficult things that you had to bypass or overcome?
I mean, it's still a journey. I haven't overcome anything. I think for a lot of expats, it's just the inefficiency of the bureaucracy. It's just really jolting for us. Like even my origin story, like the reason I'm here is because the customs office, they wanted to charge me a lot more in tax than they really should have by rights. And so that was a big wake-up call to me. It's like, okay, you know, the red tape here, it's pretty extreme. We live in this sort of gray area where we're used to kind of rules that make sense. They're black and white. Here, you do have to do a lot more interpretation of things. So I think that's probably the biggest adjustment. And also just from a business point of view, we run a business here, and adjusting to how the locals want to do business as opposed to how I want to do business. That's still a very, very key learning that I'm still, every day, I'm trying to figure that situation out. And anyone that comes in here with this mentality of how to do business, you're gonna go through this exact same mechanism of, hey, no, it's not gonna be possible to do that. Let's tone it down a little bit and figure out what the local market is actually willing to provide.
If you're enjoying this interview and you're interested in seeing more content like this, you can check out my playlist called the Expat Interview Playlist, where I have been interviewing people from Guatemala all the way down through Central America and now here in South America.
So speaking about Cuenca and how it's just a very laid-back place, what is your future vision? How do you see Cuenca evolving?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because there is quite a lot of debate right now in the community, and I think it's a good debate to have as to how much impact are expats actually having on their local community. And the debate tends to be around the different prices. So when it comes to buying properties, we make no impact at all on the market. I'm going to just say next to zero. You know, there's just not that many of us. When it comes to renting, that's a little bit different because we tend to like certain style of properties, and they tend to be in the sort of mid to upper, more in the luxury range, not just from price, but you know, just the amenities, the location. So we do tend to like the premium properties. So they're the ones that I do think there is a greater proportion of expats that are renting those. And I do think we probably are having some sort of effect on that market.
So speaking more about renting and buying, what things should people take into consideration when approaching this topic?
So when it comes to renting, I mean, that's an easy decision. There's generally, like, it's low cost, low risk generally. So yeah, you're going to pay 1 month's deposit, you might pay 1 month's rent upfront, but that's generally it. That's your upfront liability. When it comes to buying, that's obviously very different. You know, that's a very different decision. But just tackling renting first, the big thing for me is a lot of expats, including myself, I've been caught in this merry-go-round of rentals. And so basically what tends to happen is you have a falling out with the landlord for some reason or another, and you move on. And that happens a lot more than I think it should happen. It's for a variety of reasons. A lot of it is cultural. A lot of it is expectation gaps between the landlord and the tenant. Maybe they don't speak the same language. You know, that's automatically has the potential to introduce friction. And so a lot of expats do find themselves moving basically every year, or when their lease runs out for that reason. So I would say the first tip I have is always try and have the most positive relationship with your landlord that you can. That doesn't mean that you forget your rights. No, you know your rights. That's very important. But it's a different culture here too. So if you're going to have this attitude that you may have in the US or even Australia, I'm a lawyer by trade, so I get it. But you do want to throw the kitchen sink at someone if something doesn't go your way. Here, that's not going to work for you. That's going to rebound and basically end up in your face most of the time if you go down that path.
Let's talk a little bit about prices, since you deal with this all day long, every day with your company. Can you give me an average price that foreign customers, expats coming down, would pay per month in rent, and what perhaps the average purchase cost of a house could be?
These generalizations are tough, so I'm going to give you two different areas.
Yeah.
So right now here, this is Primero de Mayo area. This is the Yanankai River. For those of you watching at home, this is probably like the second main river in Cuenca. The Tommy Bamba is the other main river. And so properties on the Tommy Bamba are always going to be more expensive than properties here on a price per square meter basis. So to give you an example, here you might find like a 2-2 for rent with like furnished with utilities, somewhere between $500 and $700.
What's a 2-2?
Two bed, 2 bath.
Gotcha.
So that would be between $500 and $700, whereas something like this in El Centro or closer to El Centro, it's probably going to be more $600 to $800 for the same level. We're talking modern buildings, we're talking decent furnishings. Now, when it comes to buying something here, so this does range a little bit. We recently sold a unit down there, 2-bedroom with a study, so kind of like a 2.5. But this is a very modern, sort of 5-6 years old, and that went for $210,000. And we sold another one up here, which is a little bit smaller, but still 2-2. And that sold for $165,000, but that one's also furnished. So even in this, we're talking 200 meters, we have quite a big variance depending on the quality. So I'd say these are probably good average prices in this neighborhood. It's a good middle to upper class neighborhood, and that tends to be the sweet spot of where a lot of our clients are looking at.
You can find all of the information that he's giving in his services on his webpage. So what is your webpage?
Yapatree.com.
Hasta la próxima.
Cheers, Eric.